In our main segment, the play of the day, I have with me Ryan Brathwaite. Now, Ryan is a senior operations officer at Barbados Olympic Association and recently appointed regional development manager, Caribbean and the Americas at the Commonwealth Games Federation. So obviously, you can see that he's a talent. He has a master's in sports administration from Russia International Olympic University, and also currently a young ambassador for the International Olympic Association. Ryan, welcome to the Dry Face podcast.
Thank you, Dawson. It's a pleasure being here. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, man. No, great having you. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about sport development, sport for development in the region. It's a buzz area, but certainly we want to dive into it, especially in regarding to what has been happening with the COVID pandemic. This is a big area for you also. So just tell my listeners a little bit about what is sport for development and why is this so crucial for the region?
Well, I think first we have to look at why power sport, and we always have to kind of go back to the value system behind sport and why it's so important for human lives, and the benefits that sport offer. They help to enhance our society in a number of ways. When we look at it from the physical perspective, when we look at it from the mental, and the will and mind, right? So certainly sport and utilizing its power to help shape a society is so important. And using it as a tool for development is always something that we are very passionate about. And certainly every opportunity we can help to add a value to our society through sport, we always want to do that.
Right. And one of the crucial aspect of it is health and wellness in the
Yeah.
region. Talk to me about how crucial that is in terms of just getting our youngsters involved in sports and not just youngsters, but just in general, health and wellness.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the things that has happened, I think, has been the advent of the gaming systems and stuff like that, which certainly have some benefits, but certainly the IOC I know has always talked about getting the culture of the couch, and the reason being because we have so many issues of diabetes and hypertension rampant across the region, and certainly the opportunity to get people engaged and keeping fit and healthy um, would ensure we have a long people that would live longer, and certainly that's the reason why we want to make sure we focus on how using sport as that tool to help build a better society from that perspective and health wellness as well.
Yeah, and that is crucial, isn't it? But we're struggling and lacking in the region in many aspects in terms of sport for
Mhm.
development. What are some of the issues and concerns you think are hindering sports as a developmental tool in the region?
Yeah, I think there's three things that certainly comes to mind. I think one of the biggest challenges is access to resources.
Mhm.
I think for many of us, I think we always want to have access to funding. There's always that challenge, that conversation about how can we tap into to funding and resources which will help us to achieve the outcomes we want to achieve. Secondly, I think we struggle with a bit with having the relevant expertise because many of our organizations, for one, are volunteer based, and against that backdrop, persons then are struggling volunteering for their daily lives as well as trying to do their bits for sport. So we need to be able to have the rest of the expertise here in the region and certainly help to move that shift from volunteer based organizations to people who become professionals. I mean, certainly myself and others, as we would have talked before the show, are products of having been exposed to sport administration. Know we can use that knowledge base to help the development of sport, but it has to certainly be amplified if we want to see some of the change that we want to see within the region.
Yeah, and we're talking off air about just sport administration in the region and some of the issues that are there. Ryan, do you think it is that we lack the expertise in general,
Mhm.
or we are just afraid to use the expertise that we have? Because sport is so much about politics, yeah? So
Mhm. Mhm.
respective boards are about elections, etc. It's not necessarily about the best sport administrator, but the best person who can get votes.
Yeah, I think it has to be a balance because I think you need that aspect to be there, and you need those people who can lobby and have that desire to have the political at that level, but also you need persons who are on the ground who have the desire and the knowledge from the actual academic perspective who
Mhm.
can actually help to implement the programs. Because when we come on to that level, no, we need people who can actually go there and develop the programs, conceptualize the initiatives, which will actually get the change you want to see.
Mhm.
So I think there has to be that balance. I certainly would never throw away the whole idea of the governance and the politics side of things, so that's important. But you still need the people who are going to be able to make and the programs a reality and be able to implement them within the society.
Mm. You're one of the young leaders, and I mentioned this before we got it on
Mm-hmm.
air, certainly in the region, making a lot of
Yeah.
moves. Recently appointed to the Commonwealth Games Federation now, so you're now the big man in the region, Caribbean and the Americas. What role do you think young people play in sport development in the region, and are we doing enough to, get more young people involved in the administrative aspect of sports?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. Huh? Young people certainly have. I think personally, young people are the future. We can't separate that at all. And I think organizations, like they do for anything, has to have a continuity strategy in place. And continuity strategy means young people, because over time, the persons who are there, you need to be able to bring more people into the fold. Bring the youth, the youth will also bring their ideas. Bring a fresh perspective. Sometimes we are so comfortable in doing things the way we were doing them so long that
Right.
young people not coming in can up to say, well, have we tried this? I think they're also the advantage of the technology. And we probably will talk about this a bit more about how COVID and how
Right.
it's kind of propelled us to using technology now. But just to say that young people have that advantage.
Mhm.
Um, and I think organizations now need to be more intentional and deliberate in terms of how they incorporate young people so that they now can start to breed, um, people who are going to be passionate about the sport administration and are eager to move
Mhm.
it forward. So one of the ways I think they can certainly do that is through internship programs. I think that's a good starting point. I'm a product of the internship program. I'm an internship program at the Olympic Association in Barbados. That's how I started. And certainly this can be expanded across the region. The Commonwealth Games Federation, one of the areas I'm responsible for is a program called Equip as well. And the idea is that we are looking to bring postgraduate students who are, just finished gain all that information, all that knowledge, who are really excited to share. So, align them with CGAs, NOCs, where they can now help to build capacity. So I think it's certainly one organization understanding the value and the need to have that continuity strategy in place, and
Mhm.
that being young people and investing in young people, and then finding ways to do that, which is, I'd say, by internship programs, to help filter them in, and help them to really lend some support whoever, so that they can be exposed to the realm, of
Yeah.
sport.
Yeah. And those are some good points. And certainly in terms of effecting changes, I think that will be crucial
Mhm.
moving forward. One of the things I thought of just out of your response is how will we manage to make changes in relation to COVID with the Caribbean region already lagging behind in terms of investment in sports, etc. What are some of the new things that you think are going to be that we will need to implement to survive in the region in terms of sport for development, developing athletes, etc.?
Mhm. Um, I think it has to do a lot with partnerships,
Mm.
because what I find is that, how do I put it over? But I'll just say, I find that we like to do things on our own, and we are afraid to, collaborate with individuals. We're afraid to, because maybe we are very proud people, and
Right.
nothing is wrong with that. But I think that we need to also be open to realizing that, hey, I don't have the information, don't have the knowledge, and
Mhm.
I probably need support in this area. And I think one of the things that we probably can take away from that is we need to reach out to countries and territories where there is the resources and the technology, for example, certainly within the COVID space, and how then we can use some of the things that they're doing to apply in our context and to certainly help with our development efforts here in the region. So partnerships, creating those synergies are going to be very critical if you're going to really help to make that shift, and to make the difference that we want to see given the current environment.
Yeah, I think insularity is killing us, Ryan. I think as a region we have not managed to pull together for anything. I mean, we have managed to do it. Let me just say that for West Indies cricket, it worked out for a while. University of the West Indies has worked out. CARICOM has struggled. The CS and the M and the E have been trying to figure out how they come together. We have been struggling to put together a Caribbean Court of Justice that is for everybody. And so we've really been struggling as a region. So you're absolutely correct. I think for us to survive, we have to partner in many different ways. Way more than we are doing now. There's KNOC, there's so many that we can partner through.
That's right. I mean, and I said, I don't think we should be afraid to do that, because that's the only way we can grow. We can get exposed to people and to new information as well. I think one of the things come out of my study as well is that, I went to Russia. I went to a university where we came together with so many people from different backgrounds and different spaces, and then just being in that space, you learn so much, and you can engage with people who have different perspectives. And I think, and now after all that time, we're still in touch. So you're still learning, you're still understanding the value of having those connections. And if you amplify that to organizations and looking to see who may be the best fit for what I want to achieve, then you can see, and you can see where you can start to see that change within our region. But we have to be mindful that we have to sometimes put our pride aside and be able to, go with an open mind and try to learn and try to grow.
Yeah. Let me just ask you, in the region, and I'm going back to another part of how we can use sports. Jamaica has struggled with crime and violence, as you probably well hear. We have had states of emergencies, ZOZOs, and various names to combat crime here. And it still really hasn't worked, to be very honest with you. Trinidad is struggling with a crime wave, and Barbados, shockingly, is starting to follow a pattern from one of us. How can we use sports to combat crime and violence as a part of a social movement?
The thing about what I find, or for me, is that I think sport gives persons an identity. I think persons get involved with crime in a number of instances because they want that outlet. They're looking for that that recognition. They're looking for that place to associate. And I think if we can find a way to help persons understand that, hey, let's take some of that desire to want to be known, that desire to want to be associated with someone, and turn that into in the same sporting realm. You get the same attributes there, but it's certainly more in a positive way. You certainly help to make a difference within the society, or even to your personal development. And I think so that's certainly one way. I think we have to help to understand that sport is that pathway where you can learn a number of different skills, teamwork. It helps to build your character. So even sometimes when you, for example, lose, you don't throw your hands in the air, but you realize that that's part of the process of learning and growth. So it's helping persons to first understand that value system behind sport, and I think that will certainly help to alleviate some of the issues with crime. Additionally, as well, it's a pathway too for persons to get opportunity. There are persons who, sometimes you hear that they're young guys or young ladies who have so much talent, but because it was not harnessed in the right way, they go down that path. But if we can sometimes take that talented young person who may be a great track and field athlete, or the case may be, and put them in the sporting space and show them that there's opportunity for scholarship, there's opportunity to even get a career out of it. So I think we have to be able to show the benefits of sport from the physical mind perspective, the value base, and also to the opportunity that presents itself. When we look around the global landscape, footballers make millions, basketballers at the NBA make millions. So there's so much opportunity there that we need to be able to show these first individuals who may not know that there is that pathway, that sport offers that pathway, and maybe then we may get to see emerging talent, and we may get to see people starting to think differently, starting to understand that probably if I do this, I could get this opportunity. You know.
Yeah. Uh, no, off air, I was saying something to you, and I hope I don't get crucified for this, but I think that Barbados has a huge landmass of potential, a lot of talent on the island for years now, and we've seen it at Carifta Games, and we've seen it at junior level, but it has not transitioned in a big way as most of us would have expected at the national level. Obviously, you've had several, and there are a few now who are emerging that I think will do well. What do you think, Ryan, that has caused it? We haven't seen that movement, a greater movement of talent from the junior level to the senior level in your homeland.
I think there's two.
Mind you, this was never a
main things
question
that-
that I. Mind you, this is not a
I
question
know,
I'd
I
sent
agree,
you. So this is one of the trick
but it's
questions.
yeah, but it's something that I think that we've mulled about a lot, and certainly we talked about it quite a bit.
Right.
I think one is that there are many distractions after you finish first, you finish high school. One is the pressure of hey, or the parents who maybe say, well, this is over, kind of figure out how you're going to start to deal with your life. So there may be that, and then persons go that route. So there are a lot of distractions there. You got caught with their boyfriend, their families, whatever the case may be, whatever that is. But also, too, I think from the university and the pathway perspective, how much do we have a high performance systems in place? Most of them are the curricular level to then venture overseas, to the US or look for other opportunities elsewhere. But from the regional perspective, how best have we partnered with the regional institutions such as UAE and the other universities here in the region, and develop high performance centers and high performance spaces where we don't the talent doesn't run, they don't run away. I mean, they have the option to stay here, have the option to train, and really help to breed the talent within the region. But I find that a lot of them, unfortunately, are then forced to go elsewhere to have prospects because there's not opportunities here. So and it comes back to the point I made earlier. We maybe have to look at how do we have those synergies with the institutions. Maybe if we don't even know how to set it up, maybe we need to partner to figure out how to do it. How do we really create a system that would allow our athletes to really stay and to really train and to really breed here in the region. So then ultimately, we can then see that progressing onto senior level, and the performance certainly increasing within the region. And because unfortunately, when they somebody to go overseas, we lose them. So maybe sport, or they get after they finish their college, they've achieved the degrees, and then they get caught up with staying. And sometimes you lose them because there's not that pathway here within the region. I hope that addresses that trick question you just threw at me, huh?
Put it, Ryan. The other question I thought of through your response is how viable then do you think, you spoke about it already in terms of partnerships, but where do we go as a region, Barbados, Trinidad, Jamaica, Bahamas, Antigua, in building a sporting industry in the Caribbean? Because sport is such a huge deal worldwide, billions of dollars made. It's $1 billion, it's over billions of dollars industry, I should say.
Yeah.
How do we tap into that
right.
as a region? You've spoken about the partnerships, etc. But how do we get more? How do we move forward, especially coming out of this COVID pandemic?
So I think one of the things that we need to tap into is our athletes.
Yeah.
Athletes are, they're the center of sport, and that's where it begins and ends, right? And I think for the athletes, we have a number of athletes who we can boast about, who has done phenomenal across the global landscape. And certainly they have benefited from some of that sporting industry finance. And they are part of a product of that. And
Right.
the question is certainly how then can we leverage involve these? I mean, athletes are role models of people follow. Let's say, for example, Usain Bolt. I mean, wherever he goes, they'll follow him. But then, how can we, use him? There's the to really help to champion the regional brand and to the benefit of us. Also, to I think it's definitely we definitely need to look at how we can leverage our athletes across the region who've done exceptionally well.
Mhm.
Secondly, I think that positioning is very key as well. And I say positioning from this perspective. We've been very, very fortunate as well to have sport administrators at the highest level in sport in the global landscape up to the IOC. We have Nicole Hoover, who's the IOC executive board. We have Sandra Osborne, who sits on the CGF and the ITF.
Right.
And we have Joseph, who also sits on ANOC. And I think one of the benefits of that is that we then get the opportunity to be represented at the table, when there's that need for decisions to be made and our input can be made. So it's just about how can we continue to position our personnel, our sport administrators, so that they then can be able to lobby and to make overtures for us in this strategic way, so that all this benefits us. Um, so I think that that's certainly two of the ways I think we can start to see how we can tap into the, the 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 industry.
Mhm.
I know, unfortunately for us, we can't host any
Games. Yeah.
major events. But certainly hats off to Bahamas and to Trinidad, who've been able to attract the youth versions of the Commonwealth Games, which is good, because that also allows for the opportunity for investment in infrastructure for in the region. But to go a step further, we can now look and see how we can host training camps, how we can attract maybe single sport world championships, how we could also attract general assemblies. I mean, those are some of the opportunities where people travel, and that's the whole sports tourism realm. And that's the way that as sports tourism is one of the opportunities for to make some money. And I think if we understand how we can leverage those relationships, one, and then try to draw them here in the region and to show what we have to offer, we can at least tap into some of those bucks that are out there, um, that can certainly help to make a difference here for us in the region. But it also has to be from the perspective of involvement government. So we need to look and see how we can work closely with our government, because they also have to see the value associated with it. And once we're able to get them on board, then we can certainly do a lot more. But I know that's another conversation, and the idea of the importance of having a sport policy, having that intentional desire for governments to want to have that conversation. We know that sport is always the one that kind of catches on in the priorities of governments, and but certainly we need to keep reinforcing and keep agitating day in and day out, so that they understand the value and importance, and it orders well for the entire society and for us as people.
Yeah, no, those are some very, very good points. I think, one of the things that you just mentioned, which is absolutely crucial, is how do we get involved in more aspect of the governance of sports, whether it's hosting general assemblies right across, because we're not hosting many of those, because already we can't
No,
host major games. So if we can't host major
that's right.
games, then we should be able to find unique ways to host general
Sport conferences,
assemblies or
whatever.
conferences,
Yeah,
etc. Yeah.
that's right. Exactly.
And I think that has been the tricky part. I know recently Jamaica had hosted the Commonwealth Games Americas conference, I think probably about 2 years ago.
Yes, the
Uh,
regional meeting. Yeah.
regional meeting, right?
Yeah.
But outside of those, you're right. We need to host more. Trinidad will be doing the Commonwealth Youth Games, and the
Mm-hmm.
Bahamas did it 3 years
2017.
ago or 4 years
That's
ago.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it was
2017.
supposed to be in St. Lucia or something like that. But we're seeing more and more
Yeah.
that we can host those events. So you're absolutely correct. I think the one I wanted to ask you though, are we investing more in our athletes, enough in our athletes as we should? And is the change that is happening mostly because we are giving athletes more space, or because athletes' rights groups are emerging more and more in the global space? Of course, that's a tough question, Ryan, but I know you can answer it.
Yeah. How do I tackle this? I think first let me say that I'm a big believer in persons' rights. I for one believe that athletes certainly have the opportunity and should be given the opportunity to, because they're individuals first and foremost, and like all individuals, they have the right to express their views, their opinions, and because it's a human right.
Mhm.
But I think there also has to be that delicate balance where we don't let it go too far left. And I think as your organizations certainly come in and with the institutions such as the athletes commissions, which
Right.
I think serve a very vital role, because what it does is it helps athletes to find that to have the outlet so they can share their views, share their and just vent, and if they need to even vent, but certainly have that sort of consultation with the athletes, so that their views can be heard, and then that also feeds out to the whether maybe the governance other governance levels, whether it be at the IOC or the CGF, or even the local NOCs who may have athletes commission. So I think first and foremost, the athletes commission I think are a brilliant idea, because
Mhm.
the athletes certainly need that opportunity to share there, and ultimately they are the center of sport. We cannot ever take away and forget that point. Athletes are what make sport. They're the ones who make sport what it is, and we can't take them out of the picture, whatever the case may be. So um, but we have to do it in a very balanced way, because we don't want to go too far left or too far right, and we need to find that unique marriage so that everybody is comfortable, and that that they can still, and because they're also role models as well in the society. People follow athletes, people watch them, so we still have to make sure that there's a certain balance that exists,
Mhm.
so that these sport organizations are not compromising. Athletes still are given the opportunity to share their views and express their opinions, however they need to.
Yeah, and talking about balance, then, how do we express to athletes, both at the amateur and professional level, about brand value and getting more for their brand, curating content, especially in light of what we have seen that athletes have to be home during the COVID. I mean, they're out now training in some spaces. How do we help them
Mhm.
to the buzzword pivot, but how do we help them in this new normal, emerging out of a lockdown, a pandemic?
Yeah. Um, well, like everything, I think we have to tap into this the digital space. I think that's where everything is happening. That's where we're functioning, um, and I think we need to be able to show them how to do it within the digital realm. Teach them, maybe do seminars, webinars, whatever the case may be. And I think once again, the Athletes Commission also can play a role in helping to share and empower them and teach them and guide them, allowing how do you sell your brand in digital space. Many people don't know, certainly because it's all new for all of us. And I think there has to certainly be that conversation and the opportunity to help, share information with them so that they can continue to be successful,
Oh.
and they can continue to play their role in society. Because I mentioned before, they're all role models, and we can't separate that at all. And it's a fact.
Yeah, no, that's great, Ryan, and some good feedback there. I thought though, if you could let me know on this one, um,
Mhm.
through sport development, we can achieve, wider human development goals, etc. How can regional sports stakeholders use sport to tackle issues such as tolerance and discrimination, social injustices? And we talked
Mhm.
about healthier lifestyle already, but how can we use sports more? Not just, we don't have a, well, let's not say that, but Black Lives Matter is being pushed a lot in the States and
Mhm.
Europe,
Mhm.
etc. In the Caribbean, we
Mhm.
have several other issues. How can we use
Yeah.
sports as that driving force?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the beautiful things about sport is that it touches every facet of life, and it touches art and culture and education, because there's those lessons and those fundamentals that sport teaches you. When we talk about healthy lifestyle, there's the physical benefits to your body through sport. But I think from the sport administrator's perspective, I think there are two things we need to consider here. Um, they need to have more policies in place that would address issues such as discrimination. There's one big thing with the one big one, which is the safeguarding. That's a really big topical one as well. And to what extent do sporting organizations have policies in place that would, seek to make sure you mitigate against these kind of issues? How many have non-discrimination policies in place? I mean, and I say policies because that's key in helping to shape and to move things forward, because you need to be able to have a direction where you want to go. And I
Mm.
think organizations, I know we have a lot of conversation about these things, but then we don't transfer it into actual, written guidelines and structures which will help to make sure that things are actually implemented. So certainly policies and the creation of policies are going to be key into helping to make sure that sport organizations play their role in helping to address these issues fundamentally. Also, too, I go back to a point I mentioned earlier as well with partnerships again, because in some instances we don't have the expertise. As I mentioned, the same safeguarding concerns. These organizations such as UNICEF, who have the background, who have the information, the expertise there, and they may be that need, that desire for us to partner with such organizations so that they then can help us develop the frameworks. I know the CGF certainly has done that. The IOC has done that. Even from my local perspective, we've also partnered with UNICEF, and they've supported us in terms of helping us with our safeguarding efforts. So I think it's very important that we take the fact that we don't know everything, and we
Right.
need to look to see who we can work with to help us to achieve that as well. Ministry of Education will help with the education issues. Ministry of Health, So there has to, it always comes back to that partnership and understanding that that's going to be critical if you're going to show the benefits of sport and then make a difference. Um, I know it's also interesting because we're also touching on the issue of culture
Hmm.
and who we are, and we get so comfortable with the way that we've done things all the time. But in order to change the culture and change the way we've done things, there has to be that underlying fact that we have to be intentional about what we need to do, and that's going to be effect change. So there's a lot of change management that needs to go on in there, and changing of minds and perspectives that needs to go on, so that we can address a number of these issues of non-discrimination and tolerance, and just respecting each other's orientation, who persons are as individuals and their rights as individuals. So I think those are some of the key things that we need to kind of focus on if we're going to really see and leverage sport as that tool that can make some difference in our society.
Mm. No, those are some good ones, and you're right. I know UNICEF had done also a project on using cricket with the West Indies Cricket Board.
Yeah, exactly.
CONCACAF has been doing a lot of work also on safeguarding.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, I think, as you know, I would have brought on Kendi. We had some
Mhm.
webinars in the region just looking at
That's
safeguarding in general. But you're right. There's so much more that we can do in that regard. Let's zero in a little bit on you now, Ryan, as we will close soon. Your work in Barbados is taking on, certainly with CGF, your young ambassador, IOC. What role what are probably three of the things you think you would want to see in your country in terms of sports? And if it's in the region, then fine. But Barbados has talent, as you know, and has done well,
yeah,
but can
yeah,
do way
yeah.
more better, like so many
Mhm.
countries in the Caribbean, Jamaica included, Trinidad, Antigua, etc. Talk to me
Mhm.
about some of those things that you'd love to see, and that you think you'll help to tackle
I think
in
you want to take
sports.
the conversation off the next half an hour, don't you? I think you want to keep the conversation off the half an hour, don't you? I mean, because you're now touching a place that is very. Whew, give me. So for me, one the first things I'm going to talk about is the whole idea of youth involvement. I know we touched on it earlier, but I'm going to underscore it here again to say that the youth are the future. I know we've heard the campaign, I think, from Trinidad, where it's talking about the future is female. but I also gonna kind of use that a bit to say, the youth are the future as well. And I think we have to certainly, I maybe look at my context first and see me expand that as well to realize that, the young people and the involvement of young people is going to be critical if we're going to really look to make some real shifts. And we have to be very intentional and deliberate about how we do that as organizations moving forward. Um, the other thing that I would certainly want to see is our ability to embrace technology a bit more in our programming, in the things that we do, because that's the future as well. And we've been propelled because of COVID, and I know a lot of our organizations were not ready for it, but now we have to realize that we need to adapt, we need to be innovative, and we need to realize that, hey, now we're in this current environment, we need to now be able to learn quickly so that we can now leverage this new reality. So it's certainly the need for us to embrace technology to a much greater degree. It will also mean that we may need to look at more investment in it. So if some of the funds that we probably would have, done something else, we may have to divert now to invest in technology and in digital appliances or whatever the case may be, so that we can help to add value to our work. And then another key one for me is the whole idea of policy development. It's something that I'm very, very passionate about, because I think that's the way forward. That's the opportunity for us to really make that change. And so it means that we need to formulate these policies if we don't at the government level. So if we need to have national sport policies in place, we need to make sure we establish those frameworks and those structures, so that we then place sport as a priority and make some intentional, deliberate steps to see sport move forward. As I said, I think it's great. I love the conversation, do love the opportunity for us to chat and talk, but it has to be translated into some intentional, deliberate steps. So I'll part those three as some key things that I'm certainly looking forward to seeing within our sporting landscape, certainly locally and by extension the region. And I think there will certainly be some added value if we want to move this sport forward and really make a difference within our region.
And I think you're absolutely correct, especially when it comes down to policy. I mean, you're correct in so many different ways, but when it comes down to policies, whether it's national policies, whether it is whatever it is, I think we just need to have more of those, policy directions, whether it's non-discriminate things that looks at discrimination, non-discrimination, social justice, women's rights, etc. As you rightly said, Brian has been pushing the future of sport is female, which I also believe. I think we need to engage and have more girls and women involved in sport, not just on the field of play, but in the boardrooms.
That's right.
Doing articles in the media offices, wherever it is going to be, in the classrooms, teaching sports, PE teachers, etc. I think that is going to be absolutely crucial in how we get more girls and women involved. And Brian has been pushing that the next IOC president should be a female. I'm not too sure if that is going to happen, but who knows?
We will wait and see. We will wait. I mean, it's interesting. It will be quite interesting, but I think it's not unrealistic.
No, it's not far-fetched either.
Yeah, because we have more women on the executive as well, which is good. So certainly, it's just now who then is keen to emerge and willing to take that next step. So it'll be certainly one to watch. And I think I also want to make a plug here as well, because for shows such as yours and the role the media has to play in this movement as well, because opportunities like this are the way that we can help to talk about sport a bit more, and get the conversation out there about the way forward. So certainly hats off to yourself for the great work you're doing, and by extension all the other journalists out there and the media individuals who see the need and the value to talk about sport and to have those conversations, so that we help to take this sporting landscape from where it is now to be able to compete with the best in the world. And I think we have the capacity to, we do, but We need to be able to share those stories and to be able to show the world, what we offer, what we have to offer.
I think on that note, thanks for the plug, Ryan. And interestingly, because I was going to say before you gave that great conclusion, but your organization itself, both BOA with the Women's Commission and the CGF with some of the changes that have been made, including, having more women on the board, a woman as president, etc. And I know David, who is a good friend of mine, has been pushing that a lot. I had him on the podcast also talking about some of those changes.
To tell you hello, actually.
Sorry, was that a friend of mine?
From him.
Yeah, man. Many thanks. Ryan Brathwaite, thank you very much for joining us here on the Drive Face podcast. And listeners and viewers, if there's anything here you disagree or agree with, I was going to say, take that up with Ryan, but feel free to send us any feedback. In the show notes, I'll have his social media information there, where especially on LinkedIn, where you can find him. He's very active on those. Ryan, thank you once again. So guys,